So I made a video about Pokerogue a while ago and how I absolutely failed at beating it, and that point still stands today because I've still not beaten the story mode of Pokerogue. I did stop playing after that video, but still, the point stands. But that changes today, or in a few days, or however long this ends up taking. For this video, I ended up playing Pokerogue for about 19 or so hours over the course of a couple of days. And in those hours, I did lots of runs. Some runs made it up to floor 145, where your rival gets a shiny Rayquaza, which is just insane to beat. Some runs died on floor 10 because I got unlucky. So, yeah. But if I want to beat Pokerogue, I would have to get all the way up to floor 200, get through 8 gym leaders, a bunch of insane rival fights, an Elite Four, and a champion, and then my rival with just a massively souped up team, and then a 2-stage boss fight with Eternatus. This was going to be insane. One of the most important pieces to a Pokerogue run are the starters that you choose. Like, yeah, okay, I've caught a lot of Pokemon at this point, but I still like to go for actual starter Pokemon when it comes to playing through still. My main core for the most part is Fuecoco, Poplio, and Bulbasaur. I think their typings are all pretty good. Torch Song on Fuecoco literally melts through most of the trainers and most of the Pokemon I'm going to end up finding. Bulbasaur getting Leech Seed and a bunch of other status moves for the big bosses is also incredibly helpful, and Poplio getting Fairy type and a few other good moves later on really helps out too. Now, the problem is, you actually can't pick these 3 as your starters anymore. Fuecoco and Poplio now both cost 4 points to select, and you only get given 10 points to assign at the start of each run. So that was that combo out of their window for now. So what I started doing instead was taking Fuecoco and Poplio and either trying to catch a Bulbasaur out in the wild, or, and this happened far more often, catch a Shroomish, which would evolve into Breloom and essentially do the same job. A lot less bulky, but I was hoping it would work out okay. My first couple of runs went by very unsuccessfully. I was losing to stupid stuff. I was getting super unlucky with my items at the end of each round, and I was forgetting to check what floor I was on and check when the big fights were going to be coming up. So whenever I got to floor 55 or whatever it is, my rival popped up, my team were nearly dead already, and I stood no chance. While losing these runs might feel like a massive waste of time, the thing that I was doing throughout all of these runs is either catching new Pokemon that might be quite useful for me, and I was hatching eggs. And because it was around Christmas that I was playing this, there was a double shiny odds event active at the time, which allowed me to hatch my first ever shiny in Pokerogue, a Castform. Of course it's a Castform. Now, the upside to actually hatching this thing is that it only costs 1 point to bring to a run, meaning it fits in the spare slot that I have now after having to have dropped Bulbasaur earlier on. And the benefits of bringing a shiny Pokemon into a run is that your luck ranking for that run increases, which then means in my first run bringing Castform, my rival actually gives me a shiny charm after beating him in the first town. So that allows me to catch even more shinies, which then allows me to increase my luck even more. And for a while, I decided I wasn't even going to try and win these runs. I just wanted to try and get a bunch of shinies to increase my luck stat for the run I was going to take to the end game. If I could get shinies of all of the Pokemon I wanted to definitely bring to the end, I was going to try and do that. Another super useful thing I realized far too late into this process is that you can actually use the candies you get from your Pokemon to give it different abilities and also reduce its cost. Meaning that after a while, my Fuecoco was actually costing only 2 points to bring to a run, and Poplio was only costing me 3. Another thing you could do is actually give yourself eggs of the Pokemon using candies too. So I managed to hatch myself a Luck 2 shiny Fuecoco, which is crazy. Now, I'll be honest, I'm not really sure what the Luck 1s and 2s do. I think there's even a Luck 3. I just know that the blue shiny icon is better than the regular shiny icon because I believe it increases your luck stat more than the other one does. So, hours and hours of runs later and a bunch of really cool shiny Pokemon caught, this is what my team looked like at the start of the run that won it all. Pretty insane how different that looks from the team I was using just a few hours prior. Sure, most of these Pokemon aren't really good choices and will be dropped later, but the fact they are mostly the blue Luck 2 rarity shinies means my items that I get offered at the end of each battle would be insanely good. Or at least in theory they should be. I knew that Fuecoco would be the main Pokemon for the vast majority of the run. Like I said to start with, Torch Song Skeledirge, especially with the passive ability I unlocked that makes sound-based moves do more damage, it just rips through most of the Pokemon I will find throughout the majority of this run. Even Pokemon it shouldn't be beating. And a couple of the egg moves that I've got for it, Alluring Voice and Overdrive, give it electric coverage and also a fairy type move. So Skeledirge is now all of a sudden incredibly versatile, when before I could only hit things really hard with a ghost type move, fire type moves, and a normal type move. Another super important thing I picked up early in this run is the map. That allows you to pick which areas you visit throughout the run, and each biome has multiple paths that can lead from it. So if you're trying to build a very specific team like I am, the map means you have to rely far less on luck to get to where you need to be, and more on just Googling what areas take you where. In Pokerogue Classic, you basically want to try and build a team that can not only take out Finn's juiced up Rayquaza, but also then be able to take on Eternatus and his E-Max form. And the two Pokemon I found that seemed to be the best at both of these things were Tinkaton and Garganacl. Tinkaton's typing means that Eternatus literally cannot attack it, and the typing is incredible into Rayquaza as well. And Garganacl is super useful for the move Salt Cure, which is kind of like a rock-type version of Leech Seed, or like poisoning a Pokemon, kind of. You deal some damage initially to the enemy, actually hitting it with Salt Cure, and then at the end of each turn, the Pokemon you've used the move on takes a pretty good chunk of damage as well. He's also pretty bulky and can take hits well, so having a tank on the team is never a bad thing either. And using this map means we have a much better chance at getting the two Pokemon we desperately need to win us this run. Oh, and also a Gyarados wouldn't hurt either. So the run starts like normal. We make our way through the town, starting with A++ luck, which is crazy. We get offered loads of nuggets and rare candies throughout the first couple of floors. And once we defeat our rival, we get given a bunch of items. We've got shiny charms, catching charms, everything. We also managed to get ourselves a map on floor 9, which means that for the whole run, we can try and steer ourselves in the direction of whatever Pokemon we want to find. We climb the floors until Fuecoco evolves into Crocodile. I try and catch this boss Snorlax, but didn't work, so I had Castform kill it before we wiped. I wasn't even going to use the Snorlax, I just wanted the Munchlax starter just in case. We keep going until we reach floor 30, which brings us our first gym leader, Crash Awake. Crocodile has the move Overdrive though, which is a sound-based electric type move, so the only threat really that Wake had for us was Quagsire, but he went down to just 2 Alluring Voices, which basically won us our first battle against the gym leader and allowed us to pick where we were going to go to next. I decided to head towards the beach as there wasn't really any Pokemon we needed in the swamp or the construction site, and it didn't really lead us anywhere useful either. Trekking through the beach was fairly uneventful until we ran into some Team Skull Grunts. In these more recent updates of Pokerogue, there have been all of the evil teams added into the game that you sometimes run into and will have to fight throughout your classic run. So for this run, we'll be seeing quite a lot of Team Skull. I didn't realize this to start with, and in one of the runs, I kept running into Team Magma, and the Maxi fight destroyed me because he had a Solrock, a Great Tusk, and a Groudon. So, seems fair. We eventually stumble onto this Wobbuffet minigame. Apparently, you get prizes for bringing Wobbuffet as close to 1 HP as possible, but you are allowed to just skip it, so I'll take it as a free floor, I guess. Eventually, the beach leads into the sea, and it turns into more of the same. Crocodile taking the ocean by storm with Overdrive after Overdrive. We find a shiny Tentacool, which I decide to use to replace Castform because they're both the same shiny level, and Tentacool is much more useful. And then Crocodile evolves once more to become Skeledirge and learns his signature move, Torch Song. This is where the real fun begins. And because Skeledirge apparently knows Alluring Voice as well, this Floatzel on the next floor just wants to be our friend. So we take it and then we don't add it to the party. Yeah, moving on. But not by much, because after one trainer battle from the Floatzel, something amazing happens. We find a Luck 2 shiny Gyarados. We catch it, luckily, and add an incredibly powerful member to the team, which is just crazy. And that Tentacool we just caught, he's gone. Catching this Gyarados, by the way, brought our luck up to S rank for the first time ever, which is crazy. Floor 50 shows us a boss Primarina who was tough to kill, but we managed it and got rewarded with a Primarina of our own. Once we get the choice of the next place to go to, I chose the Ice Cave just to see if there's a good Rayquaza counter in here somewhere, and don't really find one. What I do find there, though, is Finn, who promptly gets destroyed by Skeledirge. He's added a Pupitar to his team, which could be a problem for us in the future, but again, it wasn't right now, so we'll worry about it later. Wolfric shows his face on floor 60 and gets the floor wiped with his team. This literally is Skeledirge's house. Everybody just move out of the way. And part of the way through the following snowy forest, I find a Piloswine and decide to catch it. I really like Mamoswine, and I know that he would be a solid pick for taking down the later threats in the game, so we managed to catch it, and it is time to finally get rid of Igglybuff, who still hasn't evolved for some reason. Floor 69 just had some guy offering us a weird deal, but we are allowed to just say no again, so I do, and we just move on. Floor 70 through 80 through the forest was an absolute breeze, and when we were faced with the choice between the jungle and the meadow, I chose the meadow as it leads to some other areas I need to explore for specific Pokemon later on. I did manage to find a shiny Rabombi, who I decided to catch as they're actually a pretty good Pokemon, and I wasn't sure we were going to get over to where Tinkerton was, so catching another fairy type is always a good thing. Leader Milo challenges us on floor 90, but his whole team fall to Skeledirge. Are we surprised at this point? Do I need to keep saying it? We make our way up to floor 95, which is the floor I have lost the most amount of runs to. But this time, I was ready. I was so confident I started gambling for eggs before actually starting the fight. But it did turn out to be a little bit more tricky than I thought. Since Pupitar had now evolved into a Tyranitar, it was going to be a bit more difficult to get rid of him. But we did manage to piece the team up with the mons we had, and while it wasn't as easy as I would have wanted, we did make our way through, and Mamoswine definitely earned its place on the team, cleaning up a fair bit once Skeledirge and Primarina went down. Gyarados did have to come in to help take the Tyranitar down though, but we made it through. We made it through floor 100 as well after that, and we started heading off towards the grassy fields. Feels like that's basically the same thing as plains, but whatever. Nothing really happened here at all. We hatched a purple Krabby and took on some Team School guys again. A surprise, surprise, Skeledirge destroyed Gym Leader Viola. Let's get to something actually important. We visit the cave and we stumble upon the most probably important member of our future team, Garganacl. We catch it and replace Kabutops, and our team at this point is really starting to shape up. On floor 145, we get to the next run killer, which is just Finn again. I wish I actually kind of recorded this whole thing live, because I would have loved to be talking through this with you and showing you what I was thinking and saying at the time. But it was probably 5 o'clock in the morning I was doing this, and I had music on and I was locked in. But we did get super lucky in this battle against Rayquaza as he locked himself into Outrage, meaning that Primarina was free to take the kill and then sweep the rest of the team. Considering how hard that battle is normally for me, I was super happy with the way that went, and I'm just glad that it's over. Anyway, we continue on until one floor where we get this special encounter with a Tinkerton guarding a catching charm or something like that. These Pokemon are fairly random that they choose to pick to guard these items, but luckily for us, they put exactly what we wanted in front of us, so we could choose to battle it, and when we weakened it enough, we were able to catch it and add it to the team, replacing Rabombi. And at that point, we had our team all ready to go and try and take to the end game. This is all working out way better than I ever thought when I started this run. Since we had the team we were going to take to the end, we just grinded our way through the rest of the floors until we started finding members of the Elite Four who wanted to challenge us. In Pokerogue, you can run into any of the Elite Four and any champion of each region. And I got given the Blueberry Academy Elite Four. I haven't played the DLC yet, so I didn't know who any of these people were. And it turns out the first guy was a Fire-type trainer. Skeledirge managed to slog his way through most of the team before Chandelure took him out with a strong Shadow Ball. But this just meant we could safely swap Primarina in to take it out. Blaziken looks like he could cause some problems, but turns out not enough problems for Garganacl to actually care about or be worried in the slightest. As Garganacl just uses Earthquake and Salt Cures to take out the Fire Chicken, winning us our first Elite Four battle. Amaris is the next Elite Four member, and turns out they're a Steel-type trainer. Do I even need to tell you what happened? I'm not going to tell you what happened. Lacey was up next, who is a Fairy-type trainer, and we got fairly lucky in this fight as Skeledirge was on 51 HP through most of it, until Whimsicott came out. But Primarina came in and took the lovable, squishy, but also like evil, because it's just killed my guy, right? Looking ball of cotton down. The final Elite Four member was Drayton. We immediately had to start trying to outmaneuver him as he swapped into his Sceptile immediately against Primarina. Skeledirge comes in and takes out a couple of mons, but the Terra Dragon Dragonite proved to be too much. Primarina came out and did good damage until Sceptile came back out and Gyarados came back in and finished the job. But then Dragonite took him down. Primarina comes back in to avenge Gyarados and then fails to take out the upcoming Haxorus, but Tinkaton makes a debut and takes the beast down and then proceeds to take the following Archelodon down afterwards as well. We are finally onto the champion fight, and that's Kieran. He leads Politoed, who goes down to 2 Moonblasts. Ogerpon comes out next to take our Primarina down, and as Skeledirge comes out, he swaps out into his Terra Dark Grimmsnarl, who goes down to Skeledirge's Torch Songs. Terrapagos comes out next, who also falls to 2 Torch Songs. Sandaconda unfortunately suffers the same fate, as does Hydrapple, and unfortunately for Kieran, so does Ogerpon. For some reason, he let Skeledirge get set up, so honestly, that loss is on him. That's not even my fault. So we'd technically done it. We'd beaten the Elite Four, we've beaten the champion, we've beat 8 gym leaders. All we have to do now is beat our rival and Eternatus. So we start heading into the final few floors, and you want to know what's really f***ed up? I found a shiny Brute Bonnet, and you can't catch any of the Pokemon on the last 10 floors for some reason. So I had to kill it, which is just really sad. I didn't have time to grieve though, as the final rival fight is immediately after. Finn leads Meganium as always, and I lead Skeledirge. Knowing he's probably going to switch into Tyranitar like he does every other time, I throw in Tinkaton and fire off Gigaton Hammer as Finn steps back into Meganium. I get hit with a Sappy Seed, which doesn't even sound real, and I smash Meganium with a Flash Cannon. I hit another Gigaton Hammer while avoiding another Sappy Seed and kill the Meganium. Tropius takes the floor next, and I swap into Primarina on an Earth Power, and I shoot off an Ice Beam, taking the Grass Flying Beast down. Toucannon comes in next and takes Primarina out with a Gunk Shot, and I swap in Skeledirge for some reason. That probably wasn't my best move. Then I immediately swap into Garganacl as Finn swaps to Tyranitar. I get Assault Cure off and an Earthquake that does big damage the next turn. Then Assault Cure starts hurting Tyranitar more, I can get a Recover off. But before T-Tar goes down, Finn decides to save it and swap in his Haxorus. But on the switch, I get an Earthquake off. I go for another Assault Cure, and after that, I recover as we're hit with a Dual Chop, and Garganacl just kind of sits there as Haxorus slowly succumbs to Assault Cure. Tyranitar comes back out and dies to an Earthquake, and then Shiny Mega Rayquaza comes out and takes Garganacl down immediately. I send in Tinkaton, which causes Finn to swap again into Toucannon on a Play Rough, and I swap into Mamoswine, who hits a Blizzard and then kills with an Ice Shard, leaving just the Rayquaza left with whatever I've got left in my team to kill it. Ice Shard priority hits Rayquaza hard as he hits a V-Create, killing Mamoswine, but luckily we had a Reviver Seed on Mamoswine, so we're good to get off 2 more Ice Shards as Rayquaza misses a Hurricane before taking us down with another V-Create. I send Tinkaton in, who misses that move and goes down, but Skeledirge comes in and clutches the kill with an Alluring Voice, winning us the final rival fight and allowing us to meet the final boss of Pokerogue Classic, even though that battle was probably the most difficult of the 2. Eternatus honestly isn't too difficult if you manage to bring the right Pokemon. His first stage is completely taken down by Skeledirge after he survives with his Focus Band, and then as soon as his second stage starts, I work towards getting Garganacl in and getting Assault Cure up, and then when Skeledirge goes down, I can send Tinkaton in to basically sit there and not take any damage as Assault Cure slowly depletes the Emax Eternatus' 5 health bars. That was really hard to say. The whole team essentially joins the battle alongside Tinkaton, but eventually Eternatus' health bar hits 0 and we win Pokerogue Classic mode, which the relief I felt in this moment after 19 hours of playing, it felt good. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe and I'll see you all next time. Goodbye.